What is up, you guys? Welcome back to my channel, and if you're new here, just welcome. My name is Gemma Jade, but today we are jumping right in to Listener Encounters Volume 9. Yay! I want to thank everyone who has contributed, who has sent in your encounters. I use all of them in my videos. I don't think I've ever actually said, like, no, I'm not going to use this one, so I'm going to just jump right in. Let's get right to the point. I am so excited about this series. I am so incredibly blown away by all of your kindness and your willingness to write and share this part of yourself with not just me, but the community here, with other subscribers and friends, and part of the Gempire or Stemma family. And thank you, really, from the bottom of my heart. Also, a lot of you have been asking me about my series that I wanted to do on my own personal encounters. Don't worry, it is coming. As you guys know, I have a really tight schedule that I'm trying to, free up some time for that. But it is coming, and I do have a lot of interesting stuff. So, like I said, let's jump right in. This encounter is from our friend Eric. Thank you for all you do. August 2010, Cabot, Arkansas. Our property is about 6 miles from the Little Rock Air Force Base. I was at my neighbor's house playing Xbox with a couple of mutual friends. At around midnight, we decided to call it a night. We walked them to their car, and they left. My neighbor and I were standing in his driveway smoking before I walked back home. There were no lights on in the house, no lights on the outside of the house. It was pitch black outside. All of a sudden, a light caught my eye. My first thought was, spotlight? But it was moving. It came across the back of the large field behind the house super fast, leaving a trail of light behind it. It stopped above my house and in between the house and the large pecan tree that's in between our houses, meaning, I guess, his house and the neighbor's house who he was outside smoking with. It then broadcast its lights in all directions, lighting up the area bright as day. It baked everything in white light. I could see every branch on the tree as if it wrapped light around every branch. There were no shadows. It covered myself and my neighbor as well in a bright white light for about 2 seconds. I thought I was dead in seeing the lights, as they say. Then it stopped broadcasting and zoomed away as fast and as silent as it came. There was no sound. It was just a ball of light about 1 meter in diameter. A few minutes later, the sky was full of C-130s from the airbase flying fast and low trying to track it. It changed my life forever. We both still talk about it to this day. Thank you for your time, Eric. Definitely some UFO, some unidentified flying object phenomenon. We were talking a little bit last night in the stream about what does Steve and I think about the United States military finally admitting that UFOs exist. And the one thing that I didn't consider is, yeah, they admitted that unidentified flying objects exist. Not aliens, right? Or to the best of my knowledge. If I'm wrong, correct me in the comments. Eric, thank you so much for sharing that. Yes, I can see how that could be extremely scary. I've had a similar experience, which I will talk about eventually when I become brave enough to share my extraterrestrial stories. But thank you so much for sharing that part of yourself with me and with the community. Definitely appreciate you. And if you have anything else, send it along. Our next one is from our friend Blue Crossroads, and he's been sending in so many really wonderful and detailed encounter stories. I believe he was in the past 2. I featured him, and everything he's been sending, just like all of you guys, the information just fascinates me because I know that it's true, and I know that things are happening all around the world like this. But he sent this to me, Mr. Blue Crossroads, like kind of for me to go back and forth in a conversation because of something I had been talking about in a stream a few weeks ago. I wanted to share it with you guys, though. He said it was okay. He wasn't sure if it was spooky enough. It doesn't have to be about spooky. It's anything, strange. And I think this would be good even for a topic of discussion, so I'm going to share it. Hey, Gemma. Hope all is going well. The other day during one of your broadcasts, you briefly mentioned spirit guides and spirit animals while talking about the paranormal. It caught my attention because another friend of mine had mentioned it in a conversation a few days prior, talking about their spirit animal being a white wolf. I was asked if I knew about spirit animals and what mine was during this conversation. I mentioned that I was aware of such a thing, but was not really well versed in the subject other than I did know what my spirit animal was, mainly because of an encounter I had back in my 20s when I had a run-in with an actual Indian shaman who told me all about it. A few in the group asked me to message them what had happened, so I sent them what I could remember of the meeting. Since you seem to be into this spirit animal thing and into doing readings, I thought I would send it to you as well. It's semi-spooky and interesting. It's called Spirit Animal. I know I've mentioned this before, so just a quick recap about my brother. My brother, who is the eldest of 3 siblings, for as long as I can remember, was involved in many things paranormal. Back in the 70s and 80s, way before the internet, he mastered the reading of tarot cards as well as practiced in many psychic disciplines and was quite knowledgeable in many aspects of the paranormal realm. He did all of this from studying books on such subject matters and from apprenticeship of others in these fields. Sorry guys, my lisp sometimes catches me up. He married a big-time psychic whose gift was to take an object and tell you many things, both known and hidden, about the person who had possessed the object. Clairsentience. She could also use it to see future events. They, along with many other friends and fellow paranormal journeyers, formed a club of sorts. They would all meet at my brother's once or twice a week and ponder things, test some theories, and just hang out and socialize. I was still working back then as a patrol officer and lived in an apartment complex just down the street from my brother. So many times I would be over and hanging out with them, mainly stopping by because they would always have a spread of food and I did enjoy their company. A lot of times I would be the grounding rod in their conversations and experimentations, bringing the logic and scientific theories to their paranormal endeavors. But I did enjoy it and learned a lot from them all. On one of these types of occasions, one of them had a friend who was an Apache shaman from out west, who came in to visit, and one of his specialties was to see the spirit animal in a person and, of course, communicate with spirits. I'm racking my brain to recall his name, but so far I can't remember. Getting old sucks. Tell me about it. I was working the night he was supposed to be there, so I did not plan on attending, nor did I tell anyone that I would be stopping by. I was working the 3 p.m. to 11 p.m. shift, which would put me back at my apartment at around 11:30. So, as I was passing by my brother's house on the way home, I saw that the group were all still there, which was pretty late for them, so I stopped by mainly to get a snack and say hello. The following is what happened that night at the house prior to my arriving, as told to me by my brother and his wife. So this is before Blue Crossroads got there. Most of the group were there that night, as all of them were really interested in meeting and listening to the shaman. After dinner, they all sat around and listened to stories of the shaman's life and his ability to communicate with spirits and see people's spirit animals and guides. But at one point, the shaman stopped in the middle of one of his stories and said that many spirits that were there keep bothering him about the eagle. They want to know if the eagle is going to come. They keep asking his spirit guide if the eagle will be here because they really like the eagle. One of the members of my brother's group is a man named Steve W. He's a big man with a wonderful, friendly attitude like a big teddy bear and is a Harley-riding biker. Hence, my brother thought he was the eagle. So my brother told the shaman that this must be Steve and he was out of town and wouldn't be joining them. So the shaman continued on with his talk and then started one-on-ones with people wanting to know what their spirit animal is and the meanings behind the various animals, as well as some spirit communications. That's what was taking so much time. Then my brother told me that while he was talking to one of the group, a woman named Margaret, he suddenly stopped, zoned out for a few seconds, then said, quote, "The spirits are happy because they say the eagle is here," end of quote. That's when the back door popped open and I walked into the house. My brother said, "Wow, I thought he was talking about Steve." Okay, now back to me. I walked into the kitchen where the lights were on and everyone who was in the living room were all silent and staring at me like I had surprised them. I had no idea that they were all stunned because apparently the spirits had just announced my unexpected arrival. They had the lights out in the living room but had many candles burning and I could see them all just staring at me like they were amazed or something. They're used to seeing me in uniform, so I figured it was either the late hour or I broke some concentration of some psychic experiment they were doing. So I just said, "The cops are here," and began raiding the covered dishes. There was a quick intro, I said hi, and to please continue while I stayed in the kitchen to feed my face. A short time later, they took a break and the shaman, still can't remember his name, came into the kitchen where I was sitting and we started talking. I remember him being quiet for a few seconds like he was listening to something. Then he looked at me and said, "They were wondering and hoping you would stop by. I'm so happy that you did. I've heard a lot about you tonight and they seem to really like you a lot." I told him, yeah, I like my brother's friends as well, but I'm not really a card-carrying member of their group, and out of all of them, I tend to be the most grounded one, meaning I don't always subscribe to their mumbo-jumbo. Then he floored me. He said, I wasn't referring to them. I was talking about the spirits that are attached to them and to you. They really like you. What the So I thought, okay. I said, well, that's nice and all, but to some degree, I'm the one who is not sure I believe in everything they believe in, meaning my brother's group. The shaman then let the other shoe drop. He said, it's okay, young eagle. You don't have to believe in spirits for them to believe in you. I've been told by the spirits that you already have your suspicions, and soon you will know for sure. Again, what the So then I'm brought up to speed of everything that had transpired prior to my arrival. The shaman tells me that I am the eagle, that I soar high in the ethereal planes and therefore can see all and can be seen by all in each plane, which makes me a conduit of some sort to connect the different planes together. There was some more stuff also about how it explains my ethics, sense of duty, the way I conduct affairs, etc., etc. I can't recall much of the rest. I was going to say that, but I was waiting to the end, but since you brought it up, that says a lot about why you're so grounded and skeptical in matters like this, why you're willing to listen and consider these things, but you're not going to fall for mumbo jumbo. That actually does make a lot of sense, and that's totally true. Not that you needed me to tell you that, I'm just saying. It explains too how at times I can see and sense things others can't, and also sometimes I'm able to see and sense things that others also see, but that most people can't. Anyway, that's my spirit animal encounter for what it's worth, which to me is strange because I dream a lot of walking around and hanging out with a tiger, although I do occasionally dream of flying high in clouds and above the earth. I never see myself, it's always first person, and I can hear and feel wind on me. So who the hell knows? Yeah, you're probably astrally projecting. Just saying, and maybe wifey girl is a tiger. Who knows? Thanks so much for sending that in. It might not be scary, but it is spooky and creepy, and in the best way possible, of course, don't get me wrong. And it's worth, you know, discussing, especially since the readings, especially that we do on Wednesday nights here, and people wanting to know about spirit guides and ancestors and all those kinds of things, spirit animals, right? So thank you so much, Blue Cross Roads. I appreciate you. Please keep sending them in. Our next encounter comes from our friend Dragons W. And again, let's just jump right in. He sent me several encounters, but he says he would first like to start with his Hatman encounter. So here it goes. Hello, little lady. I'd first like to start with Hatman. Before what happened in the graveyard when I was 12, which we talked about in Listener Encounters Volume 8, when Dragons was visited in the cemetery pretty much by the Holy Spirit and his hair had turned white. If you missed it, I'll put it up here, whichever side that's on, and you guys can go and check that out. I had seen shadow entities, ghosts, and really weird kids and sometimes adults. It's hard to explain those. I was too young, so it's just like bits and pieces. So to say at times I'd be a little on edge trying to make sense of what was happening, and I'd be scared too. When I tried to tell my parents or other adults, it was always the same. You're a kid with a strange imagination. LOL. Still happens today. All right, now on to the Hatman. When I was 9, during the first week of school, I was heading to class, which was upstairs in a 2-story schoolhouse. As I was walking up the stairs, a teacher passed me. It was the teacher in the classroom next to the one I was in. When he passed me, it got really cold and chills started up my spine. That's when I looked up just as the teacher reached the top step, and I saw this big black shadow right behind him. Watching in confusion, the teacher turned and headed down the hall. The shadow followed right behind him. I couldn't understand how his shadow was floating like that behind him. While watching, I walked right into the wall at the top of the stairs. Almost knocked myself silly. As my teacher stood at the classroom door, which was right at the top of the stairs and a little to the right, I heard her say, "Stephen, are you okay?" as she helped me up. Yes, I replied. Then I looked at her and said, "Did you see that? His shadow was floating behind him." I could feel my voice shake all the way down to my belly. My teacher looked at me with a kind of blank stare and calmingly said, "What?" Then she paused. "You must have hit your head hard. Do you want an ice pack?" "Nah, I'm good." And I just went on with my day. The next few weeks, I would see it following him and just stayed silent about it. That went on for a few months, and then it happened. The last day of school before spring break, I was standing inside my classroom looking out of the door when the teacher with the shadow passed by. And as always, the shadow was right behind him. As the shadow got right in front of the opened door, it stopped. It turned and started to change from a tall black mass into a figure of what looked like a very tall person. Then I noticed it was wearing a hat with a wide brim. My body started shaking and a great fear started to creep into me. Looking at this hat man made me start taking steps backwards. As I watched, it started to tip its hat at me. I froze, just froze. Then this big creepy smile started to show in the blackness under its hat. Just the damn smile. No eyes, just that smile. Then it turned and went past the door. All I could remember after that was my teacher kneeling in front of me and saying, Steven, it's okay. What's wrong? Why are you curled up in the corner? What happened? Why are you crying? I tried to tell her, but I just couldn't. All I could do was just sit there and shake and cry. Next thing I know, my dad was there telling me it's okay. Let's go home. I tried to tell him what I saw, but all he would say, you don't sleep. You rock in your bed all night, every night since you were a baby. You're tired and you're just seeing things. You're going home and going straight to bed. And over spring break, you're resting. And that's pretty much what happened over break. When I returned from break and for the rest of the school year, I kept seeing it, but not as much. But then again, I did my best not to look at that teacher and avoided him as much as I possibly could. When I returned the next year, I had asked my last teacher if Mr. So-and-so had moved or changed schools since I hadn't seen him. That's when my new teacher walked up and looked at Mrs. So-and-so, and they looked at me and said, sorry to tell you, but he passed over the summer from a heart attack. They both looked so sad and troubled, like there was more to it than that, but they weren't going to tell me. I remember that very clearly. After that, I told the teachers that I would pray for his family, and I wiped a tear away, thinking it was the hat man that did it. Should I have warned him? Would he have believed me? As I walked away, I stayed pretty much to myself that year and just hung out with my bud Dan. I still wonder today if it was the hat man, but deep in my soul, I know it was, and maybe I could have warned him better and not been so afraid of it or what the teacher might have said if I were telling him about this. At least I would have tried. I could have tried, and still saddened that I didn't. It does kind of haunt me. So only if my gut tells me to say something, I do my best to do so. But for the most part, now that I've been told a few things, I just try to watch and observe. Dragons, I totally understand that as well. You and I have a lot in common. I'm sorry that happened to you, but I think when it comes to something like this, there's really not much you could have done. And plus, especially being 9 years old, like, nobody's going to believe you. Especially back then. Like, today it might be a little more acceptable for a young kid to believe in something like this or be saying something like this a little bit more. But back then, I think you're around my age, maybe a little older. And I don't think back then in like the 80s and 90s, anyone would have paid attention to you. They might have even tried to have you committed, honestly. But thank you so much for sharing that with us. And I see you have a BEK story here. So our next and final encounter is from Dragons W, and I'm going to finish this video off with the BEK, my favorite phenomenon to discuss, besides the Glimmer Man, I think. The BEK. First, the black-eyed kids I see are not the ones you hear of. The BEKs I see are always in the hospitals that I've spent time in. No, I don't see them every time, but way more than I'd like to, and in every hospital I've ever spent any time in at all. There's one BEK boy I see in all of these hospitals, sometimes with another one, sometimes it's a girl with him or a younger boy. The first time I saw him was when I was 22 years old. I had gotten a flu shot and my body rejected it, making me very, very sick. Thus, friends of mine had to rush me to the emergency room. I was stuck in the hospital for about a week and a half. About the third day, I was feeling a little bit better, and according to my medical records, the nurses knew that letting me get up and move was a really good thing. So that afternoon, one of the nurses let me get out of bed to move around. I was standing in the doorway, holding onto my IV pole, looking up and down the hallway out of boredom. I hate hospital TV, so I never turned it on. Anyways, as I turned to go back to my room, out of the corner of my eye, I saw a kid. So I turned to look because something just didn't seem right with him. As I looked down the hall, the boy was standing in front of a doorway about 10 feet away from me. He was wearing blue jean bib overalls and a red and white striped t-shirt and looked to be between the ages of 10 and 12 years old. I laughed to myself thinking, it's Dennis the Menace. As I watched him, I noticed he was passing right in front of the doorway, like waiting for something. His head was down, so at first I couldn't see his face. Then a nurse walked by him and went into the room he was in front of. The nurse never looked at the boy or even acknowledged him, which kind of had me confused. He was standing right there. You'd think she would have said something to him, but nope. As the nurse was in the room, the boy looked up, I guess to watch her. As the nurse came out of the room again, not paying any attention to the boy, and walked by him, he watched her, and I saw his face. He had black as night hair, which made his pale face even more pale. He had very little facial features, but his eyes were black as coal. All black. No white, no color. As he watched the nurse pass by, I thought for sure he saw me looking at him. Crap, I was almost in the middle of the hall. He should have seen me, but I guess not, because he just stood there looking back into the room he was in front of. I started getting the feeling that I was seeing something that I wasn't meant to, but I wasn't getting any feelings of fear or goodness. Nothing. I was feeling nothing from him, which I wasn't sure if that was a good thing or a bad thing. So I slowly started down the hall to the room he was in front of. That's when I heard a voice behind me say, "Mr. D, time to get back to your room. The doctor is coming to check on you, okay?" As I walked back to my room with the nurse, I pointed down the hallway at the boy and asked her, "Is that boy waiting for someone to be released today?" The nurse turned and looked in the direction I was pointing and said, "What boy?" "There's no kid down there." But yet, the boy was still standing there. I rubbed my eyes and looked again. He was still there. So I said to the nurse, "Are you sure you don't see him?" The nurse said, "Nope, but people have seen weird stuff in here all the time. Even some of the nurses and doctors. Just let it go, okay? Don't worry yourself about it." So I calmly walked into my room and got back into bed and waited for the doctor. After the doctor left, I got back out of bed and went to see if he was still there, but before I could make it to the door, I started hearing a woman screaming for help. As I did my best to rush to the door, the whole while having a really big gut feeling that this is something having to do with that kid that I saw, I got to the door and looked down the hall to where the boy was standing. The black-eyed boy was gone, and the nurses and doctors were running into the room. I waited for a bit before a nurse came to tell me to go back to bed. The next day, one of the nurses that was in the room at the time had brought me a snack to enjoy. As she was checking the IV and stuff, I asked her what had happened down there the other day, and she said, "Shh, I'll tell you, but remember that I can get in trouble, okay? So don't say anything." There was a man in that room who, like you, was very sick. His wife said he woke up all freaking out, saying that the kid wouldn't let him leave, and his wife kept asking what kid. Next thing she knew, he started grabbing his chest, and that's when we started filing into the room. That's all I know. Weird, huh? The nurse said the man is alive and doing very well and has been moved to ICU for now. I have a very strong feeling that the man will never be the same again if he was seeing what I was seeing. I hope he's well now, if he's still with us on this planet. Over the years, I still see them in hospitals. There's only been one time that I saw something other than the black-eyed boy, and that was when I saw the white-eyed girl. That was at a hospital too. If it's okay, Gemma, I would like to give that story to Steve. I owe him one plus some. Of course that's okay with me. We share stories anyway all the time. So, and I have a ton of research on white-eyed kids. I would love a personal encounter with one, but again, I can just put your encounter in like my next series. Doesn't matter. Sending it to Steve is like sending it to me. You guys, if you have encounter stories that you would rather send to Steve, maybe you like the way he narrates better, or maybe you promised it to him, doesn't bother me at all. I love you guys tremendously. Dragons, thank you so much for both those encounters. Thank you everyone who submitted an encounter. I would go forward, but I just don't have any more. So I think I finally covered everybody's. So until you guys send in some more encounter stories, this is volume 9. This is what I've got. If you have any encounters or experiences with supernatural and or paranormal that you would like to make a part of this series, please email them to me at GemmaJadeParanormal@gmail.com. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a big thumbs up. Give it a big thumbs up for everybody who submitted and shared their encounters. Sometimes that's not an easy thing to do. And I really, again, appreciate it so much. Spread the love by sharing this video. Subscribe if you haven't already. And do me a favor, check out the description box for links to the 3 live streams. Campfire Stories, Friday nights on Missing Persons and Mysteries from 7 to 8. It's me and Steve Stockton and the panel. It's a fun time. I can't even explain it other than stemma, right? Sunday nights, Fireside Chat from 7 to 8 or 9 p.m. Eastern time. And that is a show about nothing. Things, stuff, things, stemma, but we may have something different coming in for Fireside Chat in the coming weeks. It's pretty exciting, but I will let you guys know as we move forward on that. And on Wednesday nights, right here on Gemma Jade, the 1-card oracle readings for anyone who is in chat who wants one. We start at around 7:15 p.m. Eastern time and go to 10, 11 p.m. Eastern time whenever we are finished. And that is also me and Steve Stockton. stemma. Also, donation links for Patreon and PayPal, and my Amazon link that a lot of you have been asking for. So thank you guys so much. Be kind. It doesn't cost anything. Be kind to each other, but also to yourselves. Always go in grace. Smile at a stranger. Have your best day. Have your best night. And I will see you next time. Bye-bye.